As far as I've always been concerned, MMOs set out to achieve the most insurmountable task in gaming as a medium. They aim to capture the overwhelming intricacy, chaos, and magic of life, to construct a world from their imaginations and have other real people inhabit it. It's wild, really, and it fascinates me. Despite that, I've only played one single MMO in my entire life, and when I first gave it a go, it hooked me for an entire decade. I really do love that game a lot, but especially of late, I've been thinking that maybe I missed out on something, that I didn't get a real picture of the genre. Maybe the grass is greener on the other side. There are so many different experiences that I could have had, so many games that build their world from different backgrounds in their unique ideal images. Now, I'm on a mission to change that, to expand my horizons and see what the genre, and more than that, what gaming has to offer for me, starting with Guild Wars 2. In this video, I'll be beginning and playing ArenaNet's hit MMO for 100 hours as a complete novice, immersing myself in the world and its community in the hopes of asking and answering one simple question. Was my MMO obsession a fluke? Or does this genre truly just have something special? Whilst I admit that amount of time is barely enough to scratch the surface of a title with a decade-long storied history of content updates and community lore alike, I'm excited to lose myself in this world, at least for a short while. If you like this video and want to support more like this, please do consider subscribing. It means a lot to me. With that said, let's let the chronicle of my adventures begin. My first shock, funnily enough, came before I even started the game. Whilst I was downloading and installing the launcher, I made a throwaway tweet. Not one with any grand observation or banger joke, just a simple post to show that I was about to try a new game and I was excited about it. But the response blew me away. Thousands of likes and comments, all from people that had either played the game themselves and loved it, or those in the same boat as me, on the fence as to whether to give in. People were so welcoming and inviting, telling me they hoped I enjoyed myself, offering their help, and showing me that this game was home to so many passionate and positive people that I had never known even existed beforehand. It made me more excited than ever to finish installation and dive deep into this brand new world. The first frontier in any game like this is, of course, character customization. Guild Wars 2 has 5 races, and to this day, looking back on the experience 100 hours later, I cannot for the life of me remember their names. There's Human, the old reliable, the normie race that I would have assumed players would shy away from, though I have since learned that actually, they are by far the most popular race in this game. Joining them in the quintet are Human but really tall, the magical race of tree hippies, the not a gnoblin nor a gnelf, although they could certainly cosplay as either on a good day, and the fur affinity users. For me, it boiled down to a competition between the Sylvari with their really cool tendrils of intertwined roots and vines for hair, and the tall people capable of shapeshifting into animals, and in a huge assumption from me, an easy mannequin on which to apply amazing looking armour later down the line. In the end, I locked in with the latter choice, and at long last, booted into Guild Wars 2 properly for the first time. As a side note, if you want to try the game yourself, please do use my affiliate link in the description. It's free, and it helps support me a lot. It opens with this gorgeous animated watercolor style cutscene, grounding us immediately in the world of Tyria and in the hunter-gatherer lifestyle that the humans, but tall, have led for generations. It tells of a bad dragon, not that kind, named Jormag the Ice Dragon, and how it forced the tall guys to retreat south, giving up their ancestral home for the relative safety of greener pastures. Despite that, they long to defeat the dragon once and for all one day, reclaim the snowy Shiver Peak Mountains for themselves, and be rid of its perpetual sense of malice. Each year, the vertically large folk hold what they call the Great Hunt, a chance for the young to prove themselves. With this setting the stage, the short tutorial begins, and in just a handful of minutes you end up killing a giant worm before being cut loose in the world and basically left to your own devices to explore as you like. This took me aback at first. The MMO I'm used to is very narrative centric, and they would never dream of letting you stray off the beaten path. I was expecting Guild Wars 2 to follow suit and to lead me through a sequence of point A to point B story quests that would lead me directly all the way towards endgame. But what actually happened was very different. Instead, after a few introductory quests to help you get your bearings, the game cuts you loose entirely. You're given free rein to explore and carve your own path through the world. Every 10 levels, you unlock a sequence of story quests, the carrot on a stick for plot enthusiasts. At lower levels, these story fragments were part of your character's personal story, which would, as far as I assumed, eventually feed into a more overarching arc on a grander scale a little later down the road. Honestly, I bloody loved this structure. It clicked with me immediately. I have to be in a certain mood to be able to fully digest and appreciate long-winded dialogue. And because MMOs are traditionally huge fans of exposition dumping and talking a hell of a lot, sometimes it feels like more of a barrier to enjoyment rather than an immersive element that drew me deeply into the world. When I've had a long day, what I often want much more is some fun gameplay, some progress boxes to tick, and an interesting thematic world to fall in love with. That's exactly what I got with Guild Wars 2 immediately. The Wayfarer Foothills, my starting zone, was full of activity. New players like me darting around the place like headless chickens, occasionally interspersed by guys who, by the looks of them with their glowy weapons and armor, had way too many hours in the game to be stood next to us in this beginner map. The map was dotted with places to explore, lookout locations nestled high up on cliffs that I'd have to smartly navigate to reach, points of interest that acted to shepherd me to the main locales nearby, and renowned hearts that were, for all intents and purposes, choice-driven filler quests to do all across the foothills. This stuff is dangerous. Like, really, it was crack cocaine to me. I spent the majority of the next hour prancing around getting to grips with the basics of the game, feeling the sense of satisfaction well up in line with my map completion bar. The place felt alive, and each time people would join me in killing trash mobs at renowned heart quests, or I'd suss out the way to a hidden collectible from the path that one of my peers had taken, I felt that I was exactly where I wanted to be. There was one main frustration on my mind though that somewhat marred my initial fantastic impressions. You see, I wasn't alone in starting Guild Wars 2. I had recruited a handful of friends to blindly dive into a new MMO with me. We had grand aspirations of exploring epic dungeons together, eventually tackling whatever raiding content we eventually stumbled upon, and most importantly, solving it all ourselves, treating it like a great adventure rather than something to be optimized and guided through. There was just one problem. We had all chosen different races and professions, and unbeknownst to us, had resultantly been scattered to the wind in the far corners of the world. We couldn't play together, at least not for now. Not until we ended up being funneled together once again later down the road. I did hear that there was a way to circumvent this using these hulking teleporters, called surrogates, but we were all on the free version of the game at the time, and seemingly couldn't access them yet, so for now, I was fully on my own. Level 10 hit me alongside Hour 3, which meant getting a new installment in my personal story. In a lot of these quests, we spend time getting to know Ea Stagalking, who is definitely suspiciously underdressed for the weather. She acts somewhat as a mentor for my race, though definitely in a do as I say, not as I do kind of way. We travel to the far reaches of the starting zone to meet the Jotun Giant King. So yes, there is a race of big people at the big people starting zone. But this Giant King has begun to worship the Ice Dragon in pursuit of further power. Considering we aren't exactly on speaking terms with the big scaly lad, we cannot let that slide. It's here we learn about the Sons of Svanir, a tribe of kinsmen that have become cultists for the dragon, and on the back and forth questing here, I make sure to kill enough of them to ruin their breeding line for generations to come. But what really interested me was that the dragon corrupts those it bends to its will. There's this sense of threat and foreboding. Like if you place 1 foot wrong, you too can end up a thrall of the dragon, shambling through the ice with your wits long gone. That's the exact fate the giants have in store for them if we don't deal with their king and set them free to find their own future. So that's exactly what we do. On the way, I get the ability to transform into a wolf, which while really cool, I very quickly learn is functionally useless compared to just slotting necromancer skills instead. Should've gone with the tree hippies, huh? I was enjoying my pick of class a lot though. As my levels had grown, my arsenal of little bone goblins and flesh mongooses had expanded as well. And by this point, I was carting around an entire troop, shambling after me and eager to dogpile and devour anything that had the misfortune to tread in my path. I definitely felt like I was playing Necromancer wrong, going all in on minion summoning. There seemed to be a bunch of strong options revolving around debuffs and damage over time, and I was curious to try those out later down the road. Luckily for me, the world was my oyster, and it was fairly easy to make changes further along based on my preferences. By now, I barely understood how stats worked, so I was hesitant to commit to a build in any particular way just yet. I imagined it wouldn't be worth considering till later anyway. I had heard that many professions in Guild Wars 2 had numerous options, even changing based on game mode for how you'd want to build your stats and abilities. It sounded interesting, different, but learning more was a task for another day. I spent the next hour working on what I had decided was the only goal that mattered right now in the game. Getting my exploration percentage in the Wayfarer foothills to 100%. Most of the points of interest were simple to find, but there were places here and there that were off the beaten path, and I had to search pretty hard for them. I would learn later that you could simply use the mouse to highlight different types of locales, and all the ones you've revealed on your minimap but hadn't visited would glow to make them easy to spot. For now though, I had to do things manually and roam suspect areas until I struck gold. In doing this, I hit level 20 almost at the exact same time I achieved my goal. It was here that I decided to stop for the night, but my god, I was having fun. I was excited to explore more, to see more, to do more. The next login couldn't come soon enough. The next day, instead of directly advancing with my personal story, I wanted to explore more. I was hooked, just soaking in the scenery and seeing what other players were doing within it. I headed east to a zone marked at level 15 to 25 connected directly to mine. There was this renown heart right near the entranceway to the zone that completely threw me for a loop. The quest was simple. It just involved defending a location for a period and defeating any enemies that attacked as they poured in through portals in their dozens. But every now and then, what I could only assume to be some giant cannon was blasting out these weird red lasers with some of the oddest visual and sound effects I had ever seen. I didn't know what to make of it. At first, I genuinely thought it was a bug, until it happened the second, third, and fourth time. I guess not all parts of this game have aged like fine wine. Near the south side of the Disa Plateau, I stumbled across a set of old ramparts. It was the ruins of a castle, complete with ghostly sentries blocking entry to the stairwells. It went on for what felt like forever, and at the end of it all, right at the top, there was a lookout point. I had to get there. What followed was 10 minutes of jump puzzle, hopping across gaps and clambering up the cliffs, and at one point, falling off the edge and having to start from the beginning all over again because I hadn't quite clocked yet that your movement speed slows down whilst in combat. That one hurt a little bit, but eventually I got it and it felt fantastic. I had loved that there were these little challenges to tackle, just out there to be discovered in the open world. These little random chunks of perfect ludic gameplay that felt just as good as overcoming a raid or a dungeon when you claimed their secrets for yourself. In the twilight moments of Hour 6, I 100%ed this zone too, and upon getting my loot chest as a reward, I took a look at the world map to see where to go next. It was then that I realised I had made an incredible blunder. So, my race are the Long Lands, right? Their home is the Snowy Mountains. Well, it turns out there was a level 15 to 25 zone directly in these Snowy Mountains, just on the other side of my starting zone. That was where I was meant to have naturally progressed to. Not here. I had instead just walked off to some random location in what I could only assume to be the Char homeland. I suppose the dozens of furry NPCs were supposed to be some kind of hint, but it went way over my head during the 2 hours I spent here. So there was little left to do but trudge back over to the west like a child who had been caught hiding behind the bike sheds during class time. It was here that I decided to tackle the level 20 personal story quests, and I didn't know what it was, but it just wasn't clicking for me right now. I didn't have any real emotional investment in the plights of the quest givers, and I felt just a bit disconnected from it all. It was washing over me rather than permeating. This set of tasks centered around me misplacing a Char vehicle whilst under the influence of alcohol, and as a result of the mistakes made in my drunken stupor, I get conscripted into a warband to help them out until it's either reclaimed or I've paid my dues. By the end of it all, we're in an all-out war against ghosts, of all things, led by a nefarious count. A more experienced player had told me that the first 30 levels of main story were reserved for your personal story, unique to each race, and that after that the overarching main plot would truly get underway, and in doing so, funnel everyone together. This made sense, and more than anything, I was excited to see how it would all unfold. With my story locked off until level 30, I decided to fill time and my experience bar by visiting the big boy central hub city, Holbrook. This place is gorgeous, honestly, and traversing its many corners and buildings was fast and fun to do, and at the end of it all I got more map completion and a nice little loot chest. From there I headed to the level 15 to 25 zone I was supposed to be at in the first place, Snowdon Drifts. This was more stark snowy hilltop landscape, filled with predators and sons of Svanir cultists. At this point, it had become habit to eagerly and immediately explore a new zone the moment I stepped foot in it, with any other goal immediately forgotten. Partway through exploring the area, I ran into this champion-imbued aberration, and a player fighting it all on their own. In my false sense of self-confidence, I decided to try and help out. And for a while it seemed like it was going really well. The health bar was going down and we were making progress. That is, until the other player died, and the monster aggroed onto me instead, and killed me in one hit. I guess I have to know my limits. By hour 9, I had finished this zone too, and continued onwards further to the west, to Gendaran Fields. And my lord, this was the most emotionally resonant moment I had had in the game so far. Seeing the snow peel back and make way for green, shrubs and trees and life, and it all felt like a coming of age almost, the surest sign of all the progress I had made in the game so far. I was honestly a little more excited about all of this than I should have been, but it drove me forward in working to add this area to my completed list as well. It was here that I learnt a basic function of Guild Wars 2 as well, that I probably should have known from the very start. So you see, in your inventory there's this little button here. This transfers all of the crafting materials in your inventory to your bank, so that you can easily store them safely and keep your inventory clean without hassle. Well, it was here, nearly 10 hours into the game, that I learnt this button existed. Before that, I had been deleting random materials whenever my inventory got too full, and lamenting that I wasn't close enough to a vendor to sell them. What a blunder, honestly. I spent the next while working on map completion of Gendaran Fields, and as I'm doing so, I come to a realization just how much of the world is at this point unexplored. The map is overwhelmingly large and interconnected, and it felt like from here I could offshoot to almost anywhere. More verdant fields and hinterlands to the west and north, an untapped snowy pass to the east, and further onwards, I still had most of the desert utterly untouched. But none of that mattered right now. My next set of personal quests was set to take me to Lion's Arch, which was now directly to the south. This place was clearly important, signified by the million purple teleports all across the world that seemingly converged there. I was really excited to see it for myself, but just as I was finishing up with this area, something awful happened. I ran out of access to my mount. It had been gifted to me at level 10, a 10-hour free trial from the developers, presumably to push people to purchase expansions for their convenience, as it's unlocked by owning one of them. So, from now on, I had to go on foot. The level 30 story quests gave me a decision that seemed important: which faction to align myself with. I could either join the stealthy and secretive Order of Whispers, the knowledge-seeking pragmatic Durmand Priory, or the militaristic faction called the Vigil. By the sounds of it, each would tackle issues in their own preferential ways, and would likely root through the main upcoming plotline in completely different ways. Given how different each individual race's personal story had seemingly been, I didn't put it past them having completely bespoke quest lines for each. In the end, I picked the Order of Whispers, and with that I was pushing level 40 and ready to advance onwards to Guild Wars 2's main story. Now it was finally time to enter Lion's Arch. There was this lovely sweeping flyover cinematic the first time you go there that shows just how special it is. This picturesque waterside haven of a city, and it was just bustling. There were so many players here, more so than I had ever seen in one place before. It was clear that this was the central hub in which people hung out and spent their time in between active content. There were crafting stations, a trading hub for the player market, some weird magical waterfall called a Mystic Forge, and this dock that looks like a bloody lobster from above, which has way more aura than I ever could have hoped for. I spent a while exploring it, wanting to get to grips with every nook and cranny, because it was clear to me that I would be coming back here a lot. I tried to get to grips with putting together some semblance of a basic rotation next. All my previous experience came from a GCD-centric game, Global Cooldown, where you're just eyeing up the spinning wheel of your combo constantly to know when to press your next button. Guild Wars 2 was very different. Instead of that, as fast as you could get your casts and attacks out, you could use them. There were buffs too that could speed you up, and they were very significant. I noticed that I spent a lot more time having to look at my hotbar to get used to the timings of everything. I still wasn't comfortable with weapon swapping regularly yet, but I was definitely becoming more proficient over time with my abilities. I spent the next 2 hours completing that snowy zone to the east, Lornar's Pass, and working towards the area south of Lion's Arch, which was another fresh change of scenery. This is the Blood-Tide Coast, a seaside haven for pirates and brigands, constructed from this sequence of small islands, complete with shipwrecks and more. Early on, there was this renowned heart which revolved around catching these little crabs roaming the area, and handing them over to the nearby Quaggons so that they could be domesticated. Honestly, it was very cute and wholesome, and I'm somewhat heartbroken that I can't keep my own pet crabs in-game, because it would absolutely be a selling point. Trust me, ArenaNet, you're onto something here. Once all of this was done, I headed back to Lion's Arch. There's this thing called the Adventure Guide, which gives a ton of XP. It seems to be there to guide players in tackling a multitude of varied tasks during their leveling process in exchange for different rewards, and at this point I had completed the first chapter naturally. For chapter 2, in order to get the completion reward and unlock part 3, I just had to level a crafting job up until 30. So, that's exactly what I did. Crafting in this game is very passive. It genuinely is as simple as finding the materials, possessing the required level, then hitting craft and it would just be done. I didn't plan on delving too deeply into the system yet, so I just crafted a bunch of simple basic materials, even purchasing the ones I was lacking from the auction house. In just shy of 10 minutes, I made it all the way to 30 and dinged the completion of chapter 2. When I turned it in, let's just say I hadn't anticipated how strong these are for experience. I went up like 5 or 6 levels at once, blasting from the cusp of level 50 all the way up to 56. It genuinely shocked me just how fast the leveling was in this game. I felt like I had barely even gotten started, and yet I was already halfway to the cap. Whilst I was exploring the Blood-Tide Coast, I came across this huge mass of players outside an old shipwreck that had seemingly been turned into a fortress. They were waiting for something, clearly, chattering excitedly, and amongst the ever-increasing throng of bodies were banquets of consumable food items and buff banners, left by the few for the many to take advantage of. I had no idea what was going on, but I wanted to be here for it, that much was certain. What followed was what I've come to now know is a world event. This big multi-stage battle where myself and the legion of waiting players would siege this fortress, defeating its sentries at first, then loading up powder kegs one by one to detonate at the main gate in hopes of blowing it off its hinges entirely. After that, our horde storms the boat itself, clashing blades with the captain and eventually defeating them. And at the end of it all, this huge loot chest spawns with upgrades and materials for me. And the fact it had happened so natively will leave it a memory I'll hold on to for a long, long time. After this, I made a guild with my friends. We had no idea how this worked yet, but we assumed it would be a fun thing we could slowly build together over time. At this point, I was the furthest ahead of my little group. The rest hadn't yet made their way to Lion's Arch, so I fronted the 1 gold fee to construct the guild, and otherwise we left understanding it as a task we'd tackle later down the line. It was now time to return to the story, after what had amounted to an almost 10-hour hiatus. Having joined the Order of Whispers at the culmination of my level 30 personal story, this next set of quests handled introductions with my fellow agents. I spent a lot of time here working directly with Tybalt Leftpaw, which would have been a very unfortunate name to have if he were anything aside from a char. He seemed friendly, and despite this being his first entry to fieldwork, after years of sitting behind a desk doing clerical stuff, he led us through the motions of rescuing a prisoner. The captive in question is the daughter of a big, important minister, clutching dangerous secrets close to his chest. And because she wanted to spill the beans, he has his daughter disappeared. We spring her out, bring her back to one of the Order's safe houses before eventually dealing with the crooked commander that wants to drag her back, kicking and screaming. It's a fairly enjoyable romp that, whilst disconnected from the overarching goal of pushing back and eventually defeating the threat of the dragons, feels like a nice way to grow comfortable with the characters I expected to be spending a lot of time with. The next couple of hours were dedicated to exploration. As much as I was enjoying everything in the game for the most part, I had found the completion of each zone endlessly cathartic. There was just something special about seeing the sights, completing some low-stakes quests, and hopping into whichever events appeared along the way. And in doing all of this, feeling adequately rewarded for my time with both experience points and loot. It felt like whatever I did, I was working towards something. I finished divesting the Blood-Tide Coast of its booty and decided to pivot entirely and head north to the Harathi hinterlands. This place felt like a war zone, with outposts and roaming warbands of centaurs, and more ambient events than I had ever seen before. It felt like they were spawning constantly, charging me with rescuing prisoners or assaulting strongholds in equal measure. As I was closing in on completion there, this big event spawned in the north half of the map, one featuring this gargantuan camp which we stormed, alongside a bunch of other players that had funneled towards it just like me. Partway through, these fiery swords dropped to the floor, tantalizing me to pick it up, which of course I was happy to oblige, and for a short period of time it gave me access to this entirely new overpowered moveset. It was super satisfying to suddenly be ping-ponging across the battlefield, blasting away my foes in what felt like a single hit. There was a big boss at the end after a defense phase that I'm sure in some world at some time was supposed to be a big imposing threat that needed to be carefully managed. But for us, with our sheer numbers, I had barely even noticed he was supposed to be a boss in the first place until he dropped his loot. Finishing this unlocked the 4th chapter of the adventure guide, and with it came this entire list of completed entries that I had already fulfilled the requirements of, yet been unable to access until now. Turning these in one by one pushed me all the way to level 80, the cap. Just over a quarter of the way through my 100-hour journey and I was done leveling. I had barely even broken through the surface level yet, it felt like. But when you finish leveling in Guild Wars 2, really you're just starting, because you unlock this system called Mastery. Basically, you can choose from this ever-expanding list of passive abilities that range from anything like mount buffs, movement speed, additional loot in certain duties, or even auto-loot, and train it, giving you a new XP bar to finish learning that mastery. At the end of it all, to permanently unlock the skill, you have to spend a number of the mastery points you've accrued. You get these by exploring the open world or from achievement completion, making this entire system feel deep and goal-oriented, permeating every facet of the experience. I loved it conceptually, and immediately set my sights on auto. Reaching level cap meant so many new experiences were open to me. Some of my friends were starting to catch up now, and they told me about a world boss that was about to spawn off to the west, in a zone I had never visited before. I had a bit of time to make it there, so I decided to head into the unknown and try to witness it for myself. The number of people here dwarfed even the amount at the shipwreck I had done a handful of hours earlier. In fact, there were so many people on their cool mounts that I'd never seen before, and it felt like the servers were chugging under the load as the battle begun. The world boss was this huge, flowery worm enemy that burrowed up from the underground like something out of Dune, and whilst its attacks mostly just amounted to avoid the telegraphed AoEs whilst putting in as much damage as possible, I was stressed. The one time I did get hit, it almost instantly killed me, so I tentatively poked away at its flank whilst trying not to get too close or putting myself at any risk. When it died, it dropped this massive loot chest, one that was bigger than my character even. These things really did feel like a reason to congregate excitedly. At hour 30, something unexpected happened. ArenaNet gifted me the game. Every single expansion, all of it. I wasn't expecting it either, and this is not a sponsored segment or video or anything like that. In fact, everything just randomly unlocked whilst I was logged into the game, and I was bombarded by a million random pop-ups with rewards that I mistook for quest rewards for a couple of moments. They had heard that I was planning to make this video about Guild Wars 2 and decided that they wanted to support it, which was very kind of them. If this video ends up making you either want to try the game's free trial yourself, or even to purchase a new expansion and catch up, I have an affiliate code in the description so that you can support me. There's no price change, it just means that I make a few pennies from you using the link. It's a way you can support the video if you enjoy it, without putting yourself out in any way. But yes, so I got gifted the expansions, which while very kind meant something incredibly important. I got my Raptor mount back. I was back in business. The second boon of this kindness was that it also presented me with 5 level skips to boost alt characters to level 80. I didn't plan on utilizing them yet, but down the road if I wanted to see what other professions had to offer, I could easily do so. But when I was reading through their tooltips, I noticed something that blew me away. You can use this skip on a level 80 character, and if you do, one of them would give them a full baseline set of exotic gear. Exotic gear is decent, and is the first real endgame rarity as far as I can gather. Many people had recommended me to immediately buy a set from the player market when I hit max level, and in doing this, I could skip that step with my fairly limited funds. Feeling a whole lot more powerful than before, I was excited to get back to work. I spent the next 4 hours just hammering away at map completion, driven by my newly reclaimed speed. This was the moment where I learned that my eventual brainworm of one day achieving 100% completion across the entire world was actually more attainable than I had believed. Each expansion adds a number of zones with their own exploration to undertake, but those had not been factored in to the overarching world completion. If I wanted to fill the bar, I just had to do all things base game. Of course, I was more than happy to oblige. At one point I came across this event that I had never seen before, called a Rift. It seemed simple enough. Some monsters spawned, which I joined the folk around me in defeating, but then it asked me to close the rift afterwards, and when I tried to, it said I needed to unlock well, something in order to do so. Luckily for me, I was able to leech off of somebody else who was able to interact with the rift, and then I could loot the rewards. By the end of my session here, I had crept all the way past the 50% map completion mark. My friends had finally all caught up past the point of reaching Lion's Arch, which meant that for the first proper time so far in this journey, we would be embarking on group content together. Guild Wars 2 has a sequence of 5-player dungeons available, starting at level 30 and going all the way up to the cap of 80. But this system apparently was scrapped after the game's release in favour of something called Fractals. I didn't quite know the difference yet, but I was hoping that these dungeons would still make for a memorable experience. The first one, the Ascalonian Catacombs, dealt with the crypt beneath Eastern Desert region, as our intrepid early game leader, the vertically gifted gal wearing half an outfit, has stormed in there without a care in the world for her own reasons. It's down to us to pick up the pieces. It turns out the dungeon has 2 difficulties, story and exploration, and we tackled the former first. It was honestly quite a slow-paced affair, trash mobs intermingling with the occasional boss fight, though lacking any mechanics that were really worth talking about. Disappointed, we moved on to the exploration mode, and suddenly everything hit way harder, and we were having to pay attention to telegraphs to avoid their ire. There was this battle with waves of spawning enemies from all directions that we had to quickly cull, and the bosses were much deadlier than before. But funnily enough, by far the most memorable moment was when this cave troll came lumbering out of a tunnel and smacked half of our party in the face, immediately downing them. What followed was this intense little fight as we tried to contend with raising our allies, staying alive, and killing the troll without succumbing to the overwhelming urge to badly quote Lord of the Rings. Honestly, it was a good laugh. We didn't have time to do more then and there, but I was genuinely enthusiastic about getting to see the next one. After this, one of my more experienced friends, Stahl, told me about a quote-unquote special world boss that was spawning soon and said to come and do it with her. She had joined Guild Wars 2 a month or so before me, so I stumbled over to the location that she marked like a lost lamb with no idea what to expect.
Yeah, you open your social thing, is Y default, and then the second tab on the left, and under Central Terria there's World Bosses. There's one that's filling up really, really fast right now. There's only 5 slots left. Yeah.
That one, I got in it.
And then you just have to come here. Try to be here as fast as you can because the instance will fill up.
After I had struggled my way through learning how to change instances and join squads via the game's group searching feature, as she explained it to me like I was a 6-year-old child, which in all honesty was giving me way too much credit, I was in. There were so many people here. Like, I know I keep saying it, but it put the Pirate Siege event to shame. As more players trickled in minute by minute, the anticipation rose. This was the first time I was interacting with what felt like endgame content in any way. I started using this as an opportunity to inspect more experienced gamers. The variety in gear and mount visuals took me aback a little, because everybody just looked so different from one another. I had never even seen most of these things before. This guy in particular, or rather his moustache, was especially fabulous. The boss spawn comes and it's this huge dragon that comes crashing from the depths, tumbling down the cliffs towards us. The fight itself was simple. DPS phases on the dragon in amongst leaping over the crashing waves it creates with its gargantuan claws, avoiding their direct impacts at all costs. Then periodically we'd need to retreat and clear trash mobs to defend the mega lasers so that we could bring the beast back to Earth once again to get to hit it more. It was fun, but never difficult. When the beast fell for the last time, not only did a huge chest spawn, but a trophy too. You could loot it once per day, and apparently this was somewhat of a tradition amongst a chunk of the game's active player base. Because this was so fun, I desperately wanted to try the other special world boss that was available to me, as it was in the zone just to the north and would be spawning soon. This one was, as I pieced together from the chatter in the waiting area, 3 different bosses in 3 different locations that had to be tackled simultaneously to avoid their enrage. We had no idea of which boss to take ourselves, so we just picked one at random and hopped into a squad. This affair seemed much more serious, as the party leader promptly blurted out instructions in all caps. I don't know how you make these banners. I don't know if these guys, if you
have read my
what instructions? Colors, run all colors. In equals smash worm. Out off equals leave worm alone. Vets kill vets. Do not only do the other colors. Grab blue equals just grab it. Fill blue equals fill it. Kill equals kill it.
I'm lost.
Incoming broadcast. If you fill blue when I say not to, you will be publicly shamed in map chat. I get that they were just trying to prevent issues, but this cracked us up. We thought it was hilarious. But what this also served to do was build the upcoming world boss to be something much more dangerous in our heads than it could ever be in reality. As we wondered what quote-unquote "ill blue" could mean in the game itself, as we'd been given zero context, the march towards our fates began. Kill some trash mobs, break some eggs, and then we get to the main event, again a huge worm. These different colours appear above player heads, which must be fed into matching vats around the arena. Because all 3 bosses need to die at roughly the same time, my assumption was that not filling blue was used to delay the damage phase on our foe, so that all 3 groups could line up their damage phases easily. I liked these bosses a lot, not just because they had good loot and were enjoyable enough to do, but because it made me feel as a new player like I was part of the community, listening to chatter, seeing people greet one another like they were old friends, and witnessing folk kind-heartedly give advice to newer players and do their best to accommodate and help them out. It was clear why people had stuck around in this game for a decade, because they built something special. They had made this world their own, and to them, it really was a second home. I felt privileged to be a part of it, even if at this point, I was a little more than a fleeting visitor. The next handful of hours were dedicated to finally making some ground with the story quests. In this time, I worked all the way through to the beginning of the level 70 plotline, and it was here that I began to finally feel myself really getting drawn into the lore. The curtain peeled back, and the overarching threat of the dragons and the impact they have on the world became clearer. The Order of Whispers, after a decision from me, determine that we need to gain an alliance with the ogres to help us build an army that can face the dragons. We help them tame rock dogs and defend their home, and eventually gain their support. The next part deals with the Risen, the undead minions of the elder dragon Zaitan, and their mounting assaults on Claw Island. This tiny island is an essential defensive measure to keep the dragon's influence far away from Lion's Arch, and when the Risen attack in full force, those commanding the city's defenses are in shock, even delusion. Claw Island falls, and its defenders mount a desperate evacuation, a retreat in which many lose their lives, swelling the numbers of the Horde with each final breath. Just as it looks like the last of us were about to be overrun, Tybalt sacrifices himself to hold the gate so that we can get the wounded out and escape with our own skins. After such a devastating loss, it's imperative that the citizens of Tyria band together to defeat Zaitan. We retrieve a powerful Asura weapon and bring its creator into the fold. Visit the Wise Tree, not that one, for advice and bear witnesses to visions that show the corrupted nation of Or. A once great place, apparently, lovely to vacation at, that now serves as little more than foot soldier fodder in the dragon's army. And eventually we band together with all of our allies and mount an assault on Claw Island to retake it, which culminates in this huge and endlessly underwhelming battle against one of Zaitan's champions, Blightghast, the Plague Bringer. The good guys win, and for what seems like the first time in countless years, the dragon seems mortal, beatable, maybe even killable. And that is where I left it, before taking a break to tackle something a little more time sensitive. You see, there was a seasonal event going on as I had started the game, and it was slowly but surely ticking down to closure. I had avoided it at first, but now I felt experienced enough to be able to piece it all together. The Festival of the Four Winds had two main components, the labyrinthine cliffs and the Crown Pavilion. I tackled the second one first, which was this huge circular arena split into 6 equidistant sections, and at the centre of it all, a platform. Each of these zones had different types of patrolling enemies, and periodically bosses would spawn, triggering a rush to defeat them for rewards. I farmed this for a couple of hours until I was satisfied, then went on to check out the cliffs. This place was gorgeous. Colourful flags hanging from the rafters, sun and sand, and the open ocean all around. This is exactly what I had envisioned when Festival was mentioned, and what I had initially expected from the Crown Pavilion. There were merchants peddling their wares, and some of it was so cool, and I knew that the next time this event came around, I would be farming it hard. The main event here, at least the one I got to participate in, spawned a bunch of loot bundles all around the zone to collect. The more I grabbed, the more event currency I'd be rewarded with. There was this flame effigy at the end of it all, and we had to throw water balloons at it to put it out. Light-hearted and fun enough, though it was significantly less interesting to engage with, so I only did it 3 times in the end. After this palette cleanser, I got back to my mainstay content, map completion. By this point I was all the way up to 65%, and I had visited every corner of the base game world map. I was almost sad to be over halfway done because of how much fun I had had. Then my friends became available again, so we got together to tackle a few more of the leveling dungeons. Caudicus's Manor, a choose-your-own-adventure mystery to find the traitor behind a plot targeting the Queen. It sounds strong on paper, but if I'm going to be honest, the story mode of this one was just awful. When we moved onto the harder difficulty though, we came across the Hallway of Doom. Being new, we had yet to learn the way that Guild Wars 2 likes to challenge you, and we hadn't yet come to expect a certain level of jank, shall we say? These turrets are supposed to be killed by repelling their rockets with the guns strewn about the floor, but whether it's NA ping, a struggling system, or skill issue, we could not get it to consistently work. So we tried a million stupid things, invisibility, gap closing and attacking them, and then eventually just hurling bodies at the problem until we eventually won. Twilight Arbor came next, set deep in the forest and dealing with the Nightmare Court. This was the most traditional dungeon of the offerings I had tried so far, including multiple paths, hazards, and boss fights that felt like, well, actual bosses. After these I spent some time doing the world bosses again to loot my daily rewards and start working towards hopefully getting my first pieces of endgame ascended gear. I wasn't lucky this time, but surely at some point I would be. Now this is the section of the video where I decided that for 15 hours straight across one day, instead of enjoying my varied diet of the different aspects of Guild Wars 2, I would hard commit to what had been my favourite thing of all so far, map completion. Seeing the percentage go up gave me so much joy, and I just wanted to get the high of 100%. So, I put aside the entire day, put a show on in the background, and fell deep into Tyria's comforting, methodical pace. I saw the home cities of each of the races, and struggled to figure out how on earth any person is supposed to comfortably traverse the Black Citadel. At the end, I'm missing one zone that I can't for the life of me find anywhere, and it turns out that it's this level 80 zone called the Cursed Shore. It's the only non-leveling zone counted in the percentage, and whilst I can tell it's very risen, spooky zombie themed, I don't know the exact plot relevance of this place yet. For now, it's just the final part of my box-ticking quest. When I finally meet my goal, I open that reward chest and get 2 of an item that I've never heard of before, the Gift of Exploration. I assume these are important, so I hold on to them, sticking them in my bank, but decide that figuring out their use is a task for another day. Alongside this, I had been working on and off on the Wizard's Vault. This is Guild Wars 2's equivalent to dailies and weeklies. You get a handful of time-limited quests to complete that can range anywhere from gather 100 items to complete a specific fractal dungeon. You get currency for completing them that can be used on a million different items that were utterly foreign to me. Mystic coins, bags of laurels, it was all gibberish. But there were 2 things on that list that made complete sense even to me as a fresh level 80. An ascended weapon coffer and ascended armor coffers. After all that I had done, I had finally saved enough to pick up the weapon. This wasn't a huge upgrade statistically, but it did feel bloody good to get. I went for a staff, just because it looked cool, and it was one of the weapons I was, at the time, most comfortable using. 70 hours in, 2/3 of the way through this 100-hour journey, and I had achieved so much. I had leveled from 1 to 80, attained 100% map completion, and gotten to complete both world bosses in the base game and dungeons with my friends. I had earned my first piece of Ascended gear, and worked through 3/4 of the base game storyline. I had explored every corner of the map, and yet there was one type of gameplay that I had not interacted with even for a moment: PvP. Guild Wars 2 has 2 different PvP modes, and one of those, World vs. World, was what I had decided to spend a little time doing the next time I logged in. When I did so, I was immediately distracted by an unexpected event. It turns out that the beta for the upcoming expansion Visions of Eternity was beginning that day, and with it came tremendous server instability for the next few hours, but also a huge wave of players infiltrating Lion's Arch on the new professions with a special little beta tag next to their names. I didn't bother testing the new professions out myself because I figured that it would be months until I got there and was able to unlock and make use of them. I was still getting to grips with Necromancer's first specialization and hadn't even touched the other 2 yet. But what was more appealing was watching people at the loading area, seeing all the outfits and weapons and different custom characters. There were so many things that I had just never seen before, and many that I wanted to one day figure out how to get for myself. The thing that caught my eye the most though didn't come from a beta player, it was a sword. A legendary sword. Eternity. Like, look at it, this thing was so cool. I decided that whilst it will be a day far in the future, I wanted to have it for myself eventually. Legendaries are the highest tier of gear in the game, and aren't a stat upgrade from Ascended, but do have customizable stats and can be easily exchanged between characters. The downside of those massive upsides though is that they are a huge time, effort and gold sink, requiring what seemed to be on initial glimpse dozens all the way up to hundreds of hours to complete just one. If you would like to see me suffer through that quest, please do let me know in the comments section, and I'll heavily consider it. Once the server issues began to settle down, I got back to my original goal and hopped into World vs. World. The way I understood it was this: there are a bunch of maps, join what you like. It's team versus team, and the goal is to capture objectives and locales within this huge zone. They can range from big castles to smaller forts, and even little villages or camps of mobs like ogres. Players were able to build siege engines like battering rams and catapults, and part of the skill revolved around maintaining supply for your team whilst denying it from the enemy, and killing them a lot. I was told to join in, find a commander, and follow them until I gained confidence and understanding myself. If I wanted to play solo, I was advised to shepherd supply vans to our encampments, and that was it. I was left to my own devices. I'm gonna be honest, I sucked at this game mode. My build was wrong and I lacked knowledge for fundamentals, and for the first hour, I often found myself grabbed and mobbed by 20 people at once. But once I got a grasp for the flow, I started having fun, roaming as a group, catching stragglers and attacking points, pivoting in and out seemingly at random timings to catch your foes off guard, using the necro pull to drag them into your team so we can bully them collectively, and pulling off a clutch win against higher numbers. I ended up spending 4 hours in here, knowing full well I would be back again soon enough. Maybe for then I'd invest the time to learn how to make a PvP build, who knows. You might remember that dozens of hours ago we made a guild and decided to worry more about it later. Well, now is that time. We'd saved up enough money in order to build a guild house and agreed this eastern themed area would be the best place to put it. What we didn't know, though, was that in order to actually build the guild hall, we had to complete a quest to clear out the area of enemies and claim it for ourselves. Turns out that this was firstly in an expansion zone and we had never been there. This became convoluted fast, but we did find a way. One of our friends had progressed far beyond me at this point and delved into most of the expansion content. This meant he had access to a bunch of zones we had never even seen before. He went to the zone in which the Guildhall quest took place, and we used teleport to a friend items to zip directly to him. This also automatically unlocked gliding for me, which was pretty nice to have. We got into the instance, which recommends at least 5 players. We had 3, 2 inexperienced level 80s who don't even know their rotation, and the other one of us was barely level 60. We decide that must be fine and proceed. What follows is an almost 40-minute instance of escort quests, trash mob battles, and back-to-back boss fights that we are very poorly equipped to deal with. We die in like 2 hits, we have no healer, but we do our best. One involves dropping these puddles far away to leave space to easily dodge mechanics, but for the most part everything that came at us was as simple as dodge AoEs and hit the guy as much as possible, and remember to spam your self-healing liberally. But all of this was on a timer. We had 33 minutes to defeat the boss, and the first one took us near enough 12 to take down. The second was a little faster, and the third is going down even quicker than that. We're cutting it close, but doing fine enough. But as we slay the third boss, and what we assume is the final one with 6 or so minutes remaining, we realise a terrible truth.
Nice.
Hey, yo.
5
Oh
minutes.
no, this one
No.
was.
Yeah.
Are you serious? Oh god, how do we even get out of here?
There is actually a 4th boss. We rush towards him, hoping and coping in equal measure that we can somehow manage it. And we play the best Guild Wars 2 our inexperienced arses can muster. 4%, 3%.
It's looking really good.
2. My burst's done, though.
Yeah, same.
One.
Kill. Nice.
That's what.
Let's
Holy
go.
shit, that was way too spicy.
Holy
Time I was
shit.
never in
8
danger.
seconds or something.
With less than 15 seconds remaining, we manage it. We win. The guild hall is ours. Core memory unlocked, in all honesty. We put down a pumpkin to symbolise our success. I spent the next 2 hours working on my crafter of choice, Taylor. I had found this website that calculates exactly which materials you'd need and which crafts to make in order to reach level 400, which was my goal for now. 500 was the cap, but I didn't really want to go there just yet. This site was amazing, and it made the entire process as painless as spending 2 hours on the market board purchasing items and crafting gear from the list can be. I'm not even sure why I did this, considering there was not a single thing I felt compelled to craft with my newfound capabilities. It was more like ticking a nice to have box in my post-map completion existence. After a couple of days away, I came back eager to finally finish what I had started. I was ready to complete the main story. These quests were long, engaging, and for the most part very enjoyable. A lot of the first half focuses on Traherne, a Sylvari who has been charged with the Wild Hunt, not that one, and his aim to unite Tyria's forces under one company whilst they deal with Zhaitan once and for all, and to eventually cleanse the southern corrupted nation of Or. Together they establish Fort Trinity right on the edge of the madness and repel any attack that comes its way. From there they strike out at Zhaitan's eyes and mouth, which are literal things, not metaphorical, and act as his lieutenants, and in doing so blind his forces and starve his magic. They eliminate the supply of corpses being used to fuel the growth of the army in being turned into Risen. From there, they plan their final assault, win or lose, victory or death. This entire set piece of back-to-back battles is atmospheric, as we ride our ornate battleship and defend it from attackers, both zombie and dragon. We stop off to rip out the last of Zhaitan's leadership, leaving only the eponymous dragon of death himself. The final battle begins, and I am expecting something truly incredible after such a build-up. What I get instead is this. Literally just this, just shoot the cannon. I could tank the poison puddles half the time too, so I didn't even have to dodge. What an anti-climax of a finale. It just didn't meet the quality that the rest of the package had presented. We get a big celebration and congratulations because we've saved the world. Although we haven't, not really. Zhaitan is just one of the Elder Dragons. There are many more that exist and pose a threat to the world itself. And there we go, the next 5 expansions are set up. Jormag still lives up in the Ice Mountains, and elsewhere there are still stories to tell. The next day was something special. We were going to be doing the piece of content I had most been looking forward to out of anything. Fractals. So these are bite-sized little dungeons with either a unique mechanic, boss fight, or in the most common case, a combination of the two. After a point, they start getting random modifiers and dealing persistent damage, unless you have this special infusion to prevent it. And yes, for all intents and purposes, it's essentially Mythic Plus from WoW. Although the streets tell me that Fractals came before that, so they're apparently cooler. The first few Fractals were simple but incredibly fun. One set in the depths of volcanic caverns where we must throw molten rocks at our foe to break his defensive shield. Then we desperately run away from rolling boulders, finishing up with a battle to the end with our foe, now transformed and more powerful. The next had platforming sections and this mini-boss that hit so damn hard, but it did almost nothing else aside from that. And then, after traversing all the way to the end, we would fight these 4 guard robots with some of the most fitting names imaginable, considering their cat ears. These guys can be dropped as minions too, little pets that follow you around. The following fractal involved a blinding snowstorm, with the only protection being the scant few extinguished bonfires scattered across the zone. We had to fuel the fire and keep it alight. At the end of it all, there's a boss. The next one had us role-playing as Char during an assault on an Ascalonian city. We break down the gate, avoid the pots of boiling oil, at least some of us did, then storming the gates and eventually capturing the central square, routing the army and slaying its commander. Each and every one was fun to do, easy to get into, and housed hidden depths. Since this video, I've gone on to complete all 25 unique fractals, and as I'm writing this, I just finished the tier 2 fractals as well, which are the same fights but with additional mechanics, damage checks, pain, and those random debuffs I mentioned. All in all, fractals have to be the most fun thing I've done in Guild Wars 2 so far. During my journeys, I had been slowly collecting mastery points, some for world bosses, others for fractals, and during my world exploration I had gathered every one available out there that I could find. Now, it had all reached a peak. I had enough experience and mastery to unlock my long-term goal, auto-loot. Everybody had told me that this was insanely useful quality of life, and gosh, I had believed them. I was really happy to have it. I did my 3rd run of Triple Trouble now. The Cobalt Head was my last. I knew I was reaching the end of this 100-hour journey, so I wanted to spend these last fleeting moments doing something that wasn't productive in any real pragmatic sense, but was something for me. I wanted to fix my outfit. It had to be something I could pick up for cheap, because I wasn't really ready to truly invest yet. It had to look nice in red, gold, black or white, my 4 favourite colours, and it had to fit the caster aesthetic. In the end, this is what I went for. I liked it. 100 hours ago, I set out to try a new MMO, to expand my horizons and see what the genre, and more than that, what gaming has to offer for me, to see if the spark was a one-time stroke of luck, or if I really do just love this genre and the way it creates not just worlds, but homes. I can't definitively answer that question with a sample size of just 2, but what I can say is that I fell in love with Guild Wars 2. I can say that for the last 100 hours, it has gone from a strange and brave new world, and morphed into a comfortable place to return to, a source of adventure, mystery and joy, a place I've made memories and shared good times with friends new and old. Home. I won't forget getting obsessed with map completion and spending a third of this video's runtime fixated on it. I'll clearly remember my first time battling both Tech and Triple Trouble, and the guy with his really cool moustache. Fractals will continue to spark joy, and I will continue to do them. The euphoria of my first kills in World vs. World will not disappear. Guild Wars 2 has made its mark, and I'm thankful for it. It's not like I plan on quitting the game or stopping anytime soon. People like to say that 100 hours barely constitutes the tutorial of an MMO. There's still so much more to do. I didn't touch a shred of content beyond the base game, aside from that stealthy incursion to get our guild hall and a couple of fractals that were added later. Those will come in the future, and if you enjoy and support this video, I'll share those journeys as well. I have since started working on that legendary video I mentioned, and I finished an entire World vs. World progression track, and I've spent over a dozen hours delving into Fractals. I'm excited to start on Living World Season 1 soon. I started off a visitor in Tyria, that much is true, but by now I feel like a resident. One who's looking forward very much to their next login. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you made it all the way to the end, I really appreciate it. Please do remember that I have an affiliate link for Guild Wars 2. This video isn't sponsored, but if you want to try the game yourself, practically everything I did in this video and more is in the free trial. If you try the game out using my link, I make a bit of money and it's a lovely way to support me without putting yourself out. If you end up buying an expansion or anything from the store, please do consider using the second link, as it'll show ArenaNet that you enjoyed this video and want to support me. I have a Patreon. You don't need to support it, but if you do, it'll allow me to keep uploading here more regularly. This video was available early to patrons, as well as pre-release excerpts and updates that go up there regularly, and there's exclusive content, and of course you'll be included in the credits of future videos. The people on screen now are the reason I was able to make this one, and I'm greatly appreciative. No pressure though, and of course, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.